packet. The thing is then you'll have it, stored in your 3-ring binder, and you'll have it on as an example for how to fill them out in the future. And let's see, I think Amber, I just got you yours. Scalfy, I will email you the documents we're going through.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And just let me know if you didn't get them. And we're going to start in a couple minutes.
So Jessica, I do have the file, just so you know.
You've got it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Amber, did you get yours?
I'm checking right now.
So, good. I emailed to everybody. Amber's just checking hers. And then, yeah, I should be able to start. I didn't put it on the page for yet, but I didn't know what you wanted to do.
Yeah, okay. Can they hear me?
They can hear you.
Okay. Hi, guys. How's everyone doing today? Am I recorded? Oh, yeah, I'm recorded. All right. Well, you guys are relatively new to the business, and I am brand spanking new to this job. You guys get to be a part of my very first seller boot camp. And I'm not a tech genius, so bear with me if I'm kind of slow on doing this for you. So, as Jessica said, you guys have each received a packet in your email. The packet is also a template that you guys can get from Instanet on the North Star MLS. So if you have a printer at home and have the chance to print that off and follow along, Jessica's hope and goal is that you can fill in all the blanks as we go along so that you have not just heard it, but also executed how you will be performing this task when you get your first listing or get your next listing and can do it with more confidence. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And this is what my North Star MLS matrix looks like when I log in. Yours probably looks a little different. I think, as you know, you can slide boxes around and make it convenient for you. This is just the way I've had it for a long time. So I'll click on the Minnesota Realtor forms in transaction desk right here. I have a listing in Burnsville that's actually coming on the market this week. It is currently as coming soon. And so it'll be going active on Friday. So we're using the input forms that I used with them. We added a few that weren't applicable in their situation, but just to give a real life situation of how we are going to be filling this out and interacting. And Jessica is going to be just jumping in when there's something I miss or something that she thinks needs more clarification. I'm going to try to be as fun and as animated as I possibly can to give you guys some triggers for memory. So when you click on that link, I always go over here to the home button. I like to keep all my transactions together. Some people will do things a little bit differently, like you can see down here, I have green agency or Ortega buyer docs, but I do ideally kind of like to keep all the documents, whether it's a purchase agreement, listing agreement, agency, in one home folder, which helps. So this is a house that I'm listing for the Petersons in Burnsville. So we're clicking on the Peterson listing docs here. And then you see there's a few different ways to look at it, but over here on the right-hand side, you'll see the link that says forms. I always like to go into forms because then I have all the forms there that I need to work on and need to edit. So we're just going to start here at the top. There's quite a few. Try not to be too dry for you. We're going to try to keep this purposeful and engaging. So as you guys know, when meeting with a new seller or buyer, one of the first things that you need to do is you need to review your agency relationships with them. Minnesota requires that as early as possible in any relationship that the real estate salesperson reviews with the consumer what types of agency relationships they desire. In the interest of time, I'm going to spare you from going over every single paragraph in all of these documents here. That's something that we can do in a follow-up class, or we can do it as individuals. But I believe the purpose of this is just help make sure you understand what lines to fill in and where it's necessary to have you sign. So there isn't anything that you need to fill in on this form, but you absolutely need to have them sign and date this form. There aren't any changes, but you're going to see me and you'll get in the habit of doing this. Once you've completed a form, you're going to go up here to File. You're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom and you're going to click Save and Exit. So go ahead and do that and go on to the next one. Hi there. Oh, that's no problem. We have a whole packet of information for you here. Oh, good. Have we met before?
No, I'm Trish.
Trish, I'm Melissa. Very nice to meet you. You have your packet right there. We're going over all of these, and then just use your pen to put X's where your seller clients will need to sign, and then also fill in the blanks as we go along. I'm not going to be explaining all of the paragraphs and all the language as we go. That's kind of a different class, but right now I want to make sure that you understand the key important blanks that you need to fill in and why. So we just did agency relationships. You can switch to the flip to the next page, and here we have the listing contract. This is something that you'll find in templates. Hi there, welcome. Hi. This is something that you'll find in templates, and it's nice because Keller Williams has already filled in a few things for you. So this is kind of the bread and butter of what allows you to list a home on the MLS and what contractually requires them to stay loyal to you and to work with you. So you'll want to fill in the date. It's really important to fill in the date that you're meeting with them. Even if you list it at a later date, or even if they sign it at a later date, it's really important that you fill in the date here that you meet with them. You'll then put in the home address or the land or the property that they're going to be listing for sale here. You must put in the city in which it is. You also need to put in the county, which is really important, and the zip code. These forms I pre-filled out and brought to them, but I left some things blank that I was then going to ask them about, or I was going to get from the county tax records. This is a house that actually wasn't on the MLS. They bought it 30 years ago. It's older than that, but they bought it 30 years ago, so I wasn't able to find some of the basics of their listing just on the MLS, so I had to be a little bit of a detective and figure out some of this information, and I filled it in just handwriting when we were together with them. But you'll want to be sure to fill out the zip code. You'll want to be sure to put in the legal description. And then you'll also want to put the seller's names on here. Now, a lot of times people will ask me, do we need middle initials? Do we need full legal names? Just do your best there. You can work with your title company to get all those details later. So it's not pertinent that you put middle initials or full legal names there. If you have that, please do. If not, don't set it. This will be filled in already for you. Keller Williams Preferred Realty as the brokerage. And then again, make sure that you put the start date the same date that you are filling out the form in front of them. Your contract end date can be really any end date that you wish. I put in there the end of May because they had told me ahead of time that was their objective, to have their house sold and closed by the end of May. And I used that date because I thought it would give them some peace of mind, knowing that I wasn't going to be forcing them into a year-long listing agreement, for example. You'll put in the list price here. This is something I find myself leaving blank when I go to a listing appointment and filling in at a later time, because you and they will work together to determine what the best list price is. And after being with them face to face, we decided on this list price here. Number 14 is something that I see left blank too often, actually. This is according to the seller, what types of financing they would agree to sell their home for. So if they are interested in doing a contract for deed, if they have the financial ability to maintain ownership of this property and maintain whatever their financial obligations are on it, and they'd be willing to sell it for a contract for deed, that's really beneficial to put in there because it opens the door for a lot of additional buyers who wouldn't view that house otherwise. But the other ones are very standard. So of course, any seller would be thrilled to receive a cash offer. Most everyone will use conventional financing. People aren't doing many adjustable rates now, but you do have to list that in if they'd be willing to sell it to someone at an adjustable rate. And then of course, you know, there are these federal programs with the VA and the FHA for financing. You'll want to really keep an eye out if you're listing a townhome or a condominium. Not all of those townhome and condominium associations are approved for FHA financing. So you'll need to be sure to leave that off if that's not an approved financing. So again, in the interest of time, I'm going to scroll through some of these things where you don't need, where you can read them on your own, or we can cover them at another time. But you're really going to want to make sure and leave these blank and allow them to put in the check mark for these very important decisions. For people's privacy, they are sometimes worried about having their personal home address listed on the internet. It's an investment property, you know, might not be as important to them, but you need to make it very clear to them that their address is going to be listed on the internet, and then it gets syndicated to all kinds of various different websites. As you guys are aware of the common ones, Trulia, Zillow, Realtor.com. So you need to make sure that they give you authorization to do that. If they say no, it'll be harder for them to sell their house, unfortunately. But if they check no, then you can skip the rest of them. If they say yes, then you need to get more specific with them about, do they want their address online? Do they want an automatic valuation of the property online? That would be like the famous estimate. And would they allow anyone to comment or review on the property? Now this one, option number 4, I can't say, Jessica chime in, I can't say that I've ever had anyone had a negative derogatory comment posted on their house, but things that I can foresee is someone maybe saying to that neighbor that they never liked, like, oh, that's that person has never cared for their house. They've left it in disarray and no one should ever think about buying it. This will protect them from those types of comments, but what it also does is it prevents them from getting as much visibility online. So really, it's their decision to make. We need to make sure they understand that, but they should be checking yes if they want their property to be visible online.
Do you typically have them check yes before?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I do, because I feel like the chance of there being a derogatory comment is so slim.
Right.
That now, if and when the market changes, you know, you guys have been doing this now for 10 years and we're in a big foreclosure boom, there may be a higher probability, so we may have to pivot and change our course of doing business. There may be a higher probability of someone saying, you know, that house was vacant for 4 months last year. Like, I'm sure there's water damage in there. But for now, I think it's safe to put yes.
Yeah, and I did have the number 3 one time I didn't check for his estimate, you know, for the automatic whatever. And Zillow didn't publish my listing at all. And
Exactly.
so then we had to talk to them, and then they were like, well, it's because you didn't check number 3. And I was like, okay, so I always check 1, 2, and 3.
Mhm.
And I don't with number 4, but I get your point, because it is probably another way that it could be blocked.
Yep,
Getting out there.
exactly. And our job is to get good exposure
Yeah.
to all of these sellers, and ultimately it's their decision, but we'll give them the information and let them decide. In other states, and you may be familiar with this, realtors do a lot of leasing of properties. In our state, it's just not as common. So most always you will be checking that it is not listed for lease and that the realtor may not list the property for lease during the terms of this contract. Please, please do not leave these blank. If for some reason they're offering it for sale and lease, then you would check yes and nay, but 99% of the time you'll be saying that it is not. Has anyone ever worked with a realtor out of state who's done, who's helped them with leasing? Are you familiar with how that works? Some other areas and why that box is on the form?
I have talked to agents like in Chicago and New York City,
Yeah,
and they just have a completely different structure. And they
Yeah.
have leasing agents and they get paid, same
right,
as us,
right.
but it's all for leasing because people don't buy it because it's so expensive.
Exactly. So that's why it's there. I actually think it originated during the housing recession when realtors were just trying to be able to supplement their income any way they could. There was a little push for realtors to be able to offer leasing. And,
So
I remember that being a buzz of conversation then.
Quick question on that one. So sometimes there's needed clarification. Does this mean like if somebody is currently renting their house and they're a landlord, does this apply for that?
No,
Do you know what I mean?
I do.
Like a, investment property, like one of your investment properties. So that isn't what they're asking there.
Correct. This listing contract goes on then to list quite a few obligations that the seller has to you and that you have to the seller. It is very important to cover lines 115 through 123, where you outline what your compensation is. And then additionally, further down on lines 148 through 153, it gives us the chance to explain to the sellers that this full commission is not coming to us. A portion of it is also going to whatever the cooperating real estate brokerage is. It is rare that the broker would ask the seller to pay a retainer fee. That would be an upfront fee of say $1,000 to cover any expenses that you as a realtor may have to market their property. So things like photography and for sale signs. I have audited close to 100 files here at KWPR so far, and I haven't seen anyone charge a retainer fee. So it's very unlikely that you would have one, but make sure that you put 0 in there so that it is clear to the sellers. And then whatever you decide as the broker compensation, you'll list here. There may be a flat fee that you're charging them. There's a lot of people now that are doing these pocket listings that, the seller may say to you, hey, you haven't had to market this like you normally would in a normal market. Would you just sell my house for $5,000? And if that's the case, you still have the cooperating commission that you need to agree to, but you could put a flat fee in here. Otherwise, you'd list the compensation as a percentage on line 119. And just so everyone is aware, and this is good for you to take notes, it is our brokerage policy that you cannot charge any less than 5%. There are a couple situations where you can, and you can come to us and talk with us about that. That's after you've had multiple transactions. It's if you're doing a personal transaction. But if it empowers you and if it helps you, when getting to this blank, even I, after doing this for 20 years, will get a little tongue-tied. We'll have talked about it ahead of time, so this isn't the first time we've seen it. But sometimes I get a little tongue-tied. But fortunately for you guys, what you can say is, my broker doesn't allow me to charge any less than 5% because my brokerage offers you as the seller these premier services. So you can blame it on me and they can call me if they need to. You also need to be very cognizant of always on line 120, putting in the what's commonly referred to as the broker administrative fee, which is truly additional commission to you, the realtor, and to us, the brokerage. So this is one of the things that KWPR has personalized when you use our templates that you won't see if you just pull up a listing contract on the Northstar MLS. So make sure that it is the form here that says the commission, and make sure and put in a minimum of $3.99. This may trigger in your memory, you heard at your orientation that our broker administrative fee is $3.99, but you can charge whatever you want. In the industry here in the metro area, there's some as high as $800, $900. I'm not sure that you want to charge that to your client, but it just gets bulked in together with what their closing fees are. And so there are some teams and some realtors that I've seen here that are charging $4.99, $5.99, and then you can consider that something that would defray your monthly expenses here at the brokerage. So minimum of $3.99, really as high as you'd like. We don't want to see it to be an insane
There's
high
one out
amount.
there that's $10.99.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's another thing I say is that in the metro, we're one of the lowest.
Yeah, for sure. You are one of the lowest. We are one of the lowest, absolutely, in this market center.
Hey, Melissa.
Yeah.
So, on 119, when you're saying 6%, but no lower than 5, I also seen that you were saying on 120 that you can put in that flat fee. Would it be about the same or normal or okay that if your seller brings in their own buyer, you say, you know, since I don't have to market this or anything like that, I'll drop my percent to 5% versus putting in that one on that line 120 of flat fee?
For sure. Yeah, I
Okay.
think percent is really a better way to go.
Okay.
And it's more common. For sure. As you guys remember, I'm sure you remember from your real estate classes, because I feel like they spent quite a bit of time on it. You do have this protected time frame, and let me know individually if you need help, if you need dialogue talking through this. This tends to trip me up, and so I wouldn't be surprised if it does to you as well. But you need to make sure and explain to them that if there is someone who has viewed the property during the time that Keller Williams had it listed with you, but they don't purchase it by the end of your listing contract expiration, and then come back to you a week or two after, KWPR is indeed entitled to that commission and involvement in managing the real estate transaction for whatever number of days that you put in here. So you can put a minimum of 10 days, you can put as high as 180 days, which would be 6 months. This is for your discretion. This is for you to decide on your own. But what it does is it protects you from the money you've invested and the time that you've invested in a listing, should the listing expire and not sell, and then someone tries to get tricky and tries to buy it after the listing contract has expired. Jessica, anything to add on that?
No, and I think, like as an addition supplement to this class, we can have a class that's the tricky verbiage, because there's about 4 or 5 where we really can get in depth. And like you said, we're going over how to do all of this.
Yes.
And so you have that, and then we can have an additional one that's like, here's, common objections.
Yes.
Or
I
I'm
like
doing
that.
it in a Zoom, and now I need to make sure to present it accurately, because they're just getting the document, and maybe they're not sitting face to face, So I think that can be another class. And then, if you guys run into certain things that typically you're like, I keep getting pushback on this, right? So what that would tell me is that 1, you're not comfortable in presenting it, and 2, it's confusing information.
Yeah,
Right?
for sure.
Because that's what happens is that there's still there's a piece on the buyer agreement that I'm always like, oh, okay, well, so this is worded dumb. That's what I preface
Right.
that, right? So
Right.
absolutely.
Okay, good. All right. This is not tricky to explain. This is always my favorite part to explain because, it's just the consumer's common perception that realtors are making a lot of money, especially in the seller's market right now. So this is a relief to always be able to explain, and we call it disclosure, that KWPR, the broker, shall offer compensation to cooperating brokers. The compensation to cooperating brokers shall be as follows. It is really almost always 2.7% of the gross sales price. If you've negotiated a different commission and you guys have agreed that you're going to offer a compensation of 2.5% or something like that, that is a discussion you need to have with me as a broker, because as our brokerage, our agreement is that we are going to pay out the highest and best, the most common, the most positively perceived by cooperating real estate brokerages of 2.7%. So you'll list that in here. There really is no need to check the second box. And there may be some creative things, especially now that we're coming up with in terms of compensation that we're offering to other real estate brokerages, that you would fill in on line 53, but I haven't seen a single one of those yet. I like to suggest that before before checking one or the other of some of these boxes, that you really do ethically make sure that you're having the conversation with your seller to ask them these questions, these either or questions. So when it comes to closing services, it is common for a realtor to have a cooperating relationship with a title company. I look at that title closer as someone who almost is like your proof checker. They're almost the person who's making sure all your documents are there and that closing is going to go smoothly for your clients. So it's like a second in command almost. So I like for my sellers to agree to allow the brokerage to arrange for a qualified closing agent. And this is exactly how I explain it to the sellers at the time that we're going over this form. However, there may be someone in their family or one of their closest friends who works at a title company, and maybe they know someone who's an attorney and they want the attorney to look it over. So make sure that they understand that they have the option on either line 146 or 145. They get to choose it. Once they've chosen it, that's why there's an initials here. So a lot of you will be sending these to the sellers for electronic signatures, and that's okay. Just make sure that you're talking about some of these things rather than just throwing in check mark and sending it to them for signing. Now, this is something that may surprise you. It has a really huge importance, lines 174 through 172. You can buy a home if you are not a citizen of the United States. You can buy it in cash. You can, do it in a variety of ways. But once you've done that and you go to resell it, there's a possibility you may then leave the country, and then there's huge tax implications on that, especially if they didn't pay the appropriate taxes. The buyer has now taken over the ownership of the property, and then the buyer would be informed that they have a large tax bill that passes down from the seller to them if the seller didn't do what they're supposed to do. So it's really, really important in a few different spots on the forms that you go over with the seller this verification. And this is not us hoping the seller is not a foreign person. This is the seller saying, indeed, I am not a foreign person. So you need to have that conversation rather than making that assumption. And we'll talk about that at a few other times. This isn't a box because it's important. And it will draw the seller's attention to it, and that's the intention. You need to make sure, as you've discussed already in agency relationships form, you need to make sure that they understand that if you sell the house to a buyer who doesn't have a realtor, but also if someone from the 200 other realtors in your office sells your listing, that's within one brokerage, that's considered dual agency. So you need to make sure, again, and ask them. So this is not only a check either or and then initial, this is check either or and then sign it, and then you sign it as well. So make sure and have this discussion with them before just checking for them. And they sign and date, and you sign as well. You'll notice that every page has the address on the top. That's really important. If this is something where you're just going to take this blank document and bring it along with you and fill it out when you get to the listing, that's okay. I definitely see a lot of handwritten agreements, but just make sure and make all of your forms complete. Make sure and fill that in. Another thing I'd really like to see you get into best practices on making this very complete is filling out all the details on the seller's information here. KWPR has no way of contacting your clients and really no need of contacting your clients unless there's some sort of emergency. So it's valuable and beneficial for you to write in not only your seller's name, but also their address, also their phone number, also their email address. I find myself leaving the seller name here blank in almost all instances because this is a good prompt and a good reminder for me to ask them, is this your legal name? What is your middle initial? And then I'll reference back on this quite a bit to make sure that I have their legal name and all their contact information accurate. So that covers that one. Any questions on it? Anything that I missed? There's a couple new faces in the group, so I want to make sure and introduce myself. I'm Melissa. I'm the broker here. What are your names?
Ashley.
Ashley. Oh, Ashley Best. All right. And what's your name?
Dawn.
Dawn. And Rebecca, you three look like you could be sisters. Have you ever met one another before?
No.
Oh my goodness. Crazy. And then who is this cute little future realtor in training?
It's a hunter.
Hunter.
A nanny for his family, so you guys might
Okay.
see him fairly often.
I like it. I have two daughters that are 7 and 11. And they come with me to a lot of real estate stuff, but Hunter, you are not going to believe the craziest thing I did to them when I was at work. I left them in my car. I got out of my car to point something out to someone, and they locked themselves inside. Can you imagine?
He's gonna go door knocking.
Oh my God.
We need to get him a little colored shirt.
Done. Consider it done. We will do it. All right. Well, just jump in if you have questions. This can get kind of long and monotonous, so try to help me make sure that it's fun. Okay, tease me. All right. So once you've completed a form, it takes a lot of work to fill all that in. Do not skip the step of going up here to file and scrolling all the way to the bottom to say save and exit. If you're worried about losing all the important information that you put in, anytime you want to, you can go up here to file and click save and just do the first save button here. But I tend to get in the habit of filling out a whole form and then going down to save and exit. Yeah.
So sometimes I've been seeing other brokerages charge 2.5%.
Yes.
So that's the decision that the realtor makes, whether the buyer is paying difference.
Right. It's actually our company policy that we would like you to pay out a cooperating 2.7%. So if you take a listing at that 5%, then that means you make 2.3. You can come to me and ask permission. And then I go to even higher powers that be. Certainly there are exceptions that are made, but we want to be seen as a real estate company who really values the partnership of cooperating realtors. So it is our policy that we always pay out 2.7 so that we don't erode and get people to start thinking that we're a discount brokerage or we're, you know, not going to pay realtors for the hard work and the effort that they made on making offers on 10 houses for their clients. There's a lot of reasons that it is really just KWPR's preference that you guys pay out 2.7%.
Yep,
Anything
and there are some areas that are lower. Like Marshall,
Mhm.
we have an office there and they are not at 6,
Good point.
right? Because that's not what everybody else is at.
Good point.
And Faribault is another one. I mean, I went to get a listing in Faribault. I was like, you know, I'm charging 6, right? I didn't get the listing because in Faribault, they don't charge 6, right?
Yeah.
Like Cassandra and Lori, you have run into that as well, right? I mean, like when you're showing homes in St. Peter.
My
where-
2%.
Say that again.
The last closing I had, they were doing 2%.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
And then Lori, what did you do?
Oh, so with that one, it was kind of a hassle. So I had talked to the lender who told me that I could put $1,000 more in closing costs for my commission. And we came down to the closing day, found out that that was not something I could do, and that maybe I could have if I made an amendment, but I didn't realize, I didn't know that I was supposed to do that. So it ended up that it looked like it was just closing costs. And even though we had put an extra 1,000 in, I had to take the 2% because my client didn't have the money. And also I wanted a good relationship with them. And yeah, that we were struggling to figure out if we could make it work. And then they said that there's been situations where they ended up going to court because you can't take closing costs for commission.
Right. And
So
what we talked about was that there was a possibility that the buyer could have paid that 2.7, which meant he'd be paying 0.7. And so that's
right.
what I always tell agents is if that's something that you want, you have to have that conversation with your buyer beforehand. You can't do that once you get to the property and say, okay, now they're only paying out 2. So you're going to be paying 0.7, right? So you want to have those conversations, which is not, I mean, that's more the buyer side of
Right.
things. but it is something that you want to be super upfront about when you're dealing with your clients as far as what those percentages are, so that everybody's on the same page.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we actually had that conversation and I knew he didn't have any extra money, so I just took the loss in it.
All right, let's go down to KWPR additional disclosures. I was at a different real estate brokerage for the first 20 years of my career. They didn't have anything like this, so consider yourselves really fortunate to have this. This is an ongoing, ever-evolving document, but it covers some key things that Keller Williams wants you to have discussed ahead of time rather than after the fact with your clients. This is used for both buyers and sellers, and it's just good information. So take this and be sure to read it really thoroughly. Down here is one that is happening right now. So you're going to talk about it with your sellers. Of course, you're also going to talk about it with your buyers, but just to spend a little bit of time on it. Again, don't send this to them having pre-checked the I do and put an initial block here. Make sure that you talked about it ahead of time. And this is where you have a listing, it gets 3 offers. Do the sellers give you permission as their realtor to say to everyone who's showing the house or the other offers that come in, yes, indeed, we already have an offer, or we have multiple offers? I honestly can't think of a reason why a seller wouldn't want to say that. To me, it seems like it creates this fear of loss, and that's a good thing for driving the price high, which is what you're trying to do for your seller. But certainly everyone has different life experiences, everyone has different opinions, and so if it is their opinion, maybe it's a cultural belief, make sure that you've given them the option. Either you can divulge that information or you can't, and you can check either or. So again, really, really good information. Please read through this, please study it. It is only signed by the buyers or the sellers. It doesn't need to be signed by you. There aren't any blanks that you need to fill in here. So you can save and exit, or you can just exit it. But I want you to understand how important that form is. This is another one that is specific to KWPR, though you'll see this at nearly every step of the way on a real estate transaction, because the mortgage companies own multiple businesses, the title companies own multiple businesses. But as consumers, the consumers for consumer protection deserve to be informed if the owners of the company they're working with also own other companies that may be affiliated with them. Keller Williams, each office is owned independently and independently operated. It's a little bit like a franchise. So the same pool of owners who own Keller Williams Preferred Realty may also own 10% of a mortgage company or 15% of a title company. It's not that they own the whole thing. It's just that they may have a little interest in these businesses, and they are not required to use these listing providers. They're there as a convenience. But you just need to make sure and educate and inform them on them, both buyers and sellers. So again, nothing you need to fill in, but we'll just save and exit. Yeah.
No, I have my forms all printed off and ready to go if I have a meeting with somebody for a paper.
Awesome.
I've had the disclosures at the beginning. Do you think it's better to have it in this order, or does that matter if they're given all 3 disclosures?
That's such a good question. I would say many things about our business are more of an art than a science. We're individuals. We market ourselves as individual realtors. You really can do these in whatever order that you like, however it feels comfortable. In the packet, when you go to meet someone at their house for a listing, I would make sure and have those forms in there so that they can see it was your intention to educate them on this, even if you don't sign them that first time that you meet with them. But no, I don't believe it needs to go in a certain order. This is just the order that it feels natural for me. Jessica, do you have anything to add to that? Do these have to be done in a certain way?
No, I mean, in really, those checklists that I have, those laminated ones, those kind of just go through it in the old checklist that Steve had. So it doesn't really matter. I kind of tend to do, when I'm presenting it to them, I tend to do it in this order. Just because I don't know why. Again, in art.
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's what your preference. I mean, always agency always has to be first, right?
Yes.
And then it kind of, what I do is I'll do my disclosures first, and then I'll do the listing contract, because I feel like it's like less like sign your name, we're working together. You know what I mean? It kind of warms them up.
True. Oh,
know?
that's a good way to look at it. It would be kind of a warm up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Great question. Okay, so let's just say you totally lucked out. You went to the listing appointment, you prepared all this information, you brought all the paperwork with you, you got them signing that listing contract right away, no questions asked, and then they say to you, oh, but by the way, we're working on this project or that project, or oh, we're having guests in town this weekend. We can't actually have our house available for showings for a while. And you're like, oh no, I had the photographer lined up, and it's a policy of my brokerage that
Uh-oh, I lost audio. Did everybody else lose audio too?
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, I did too.
I did too.
I'm messaging Jess right now. I don't know if they can hear us. So well, hopefully they come back.
Right. It's like, or we can host
Apparently,
this thing
Cassandra, you're
ourselves.
the host now.
Cassandra the host.
Yes.
Maybe we should try to pop back in.
Still not there.
I'm gonna text Jess personally real quick.
Yeah, I spoke to the one that said we lost audio, but I don't.
Oh, she told me that they're working on it and that the internet is being rebooted.
Oh, okay. So we'll just hang out. How are things going for you guys? So like, I started in December, but like then I got COVID and then, pulmonary embolisms and all that stuff. So like now I'm like just kicking off like my marketing thing. And Cassandra, I've totally stolen some of the marketing ideas that you've just as a heads up, because they were adorable. And I was like, okay, stealing that idea.
Yeah, for sure.
But like, how are you guys doing? Like, I feel like I'm really good with people in person, and I feel like I struggle feeling comfortable with like door knocking by myself because I'm a girl and the state of our like political climate is not necessarily always friendly to women, and also to women that look like me, particularly because I'm a Black female. And so like I feel like a little bit uncomfortable door knocking because I'm just scared to do it.
I've done door knocking before, and honestly, I think it's harder for some guys.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because we're less intimidating,
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It scares me a little bit.
Yeah.
I've done door knocking with all of this for a little while, and mostly just around my area in Belle Plaine where I live. And I got a buyer out of it, which was great. But I feel I completely understand where you're coming from, because, I'm only 4 feet tall. Like, in this town, there's a lot of people that know me because of our business, which is great. And that's a plus for me. But I did get a creepy phone call out of it, and did have to go to the cops about it, just because,
Oh my gosh.
just to be better safe than sorry. Like, he had
Right.
just called me and was like, I have your information. He explained like my picture and everything. And he was like, I'm in between 4 padded walls. I want you to help me get out. Like, I have your stuff, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So there is some stuff that can happen, but I feel like that's gonna, that can
Right.
happen no matter what. So I don't know. I
Right.
feel like as long as you're like fun and friendly
For
and
sure,
like,
pepper spray just in case.
right?
Yeah. I actually follow a girl that makes like kits on, and I ordered one from her, so I have that. So like I have like a noisemaker, like you pull the pin out and it like literally will sound an alarm that you can hear for like 600 feet.
Oh, wow.
And then
Nice.
I carry pepper spray too. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're good. You got this.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured I might go in my neighborhood because, people know me because I have a gigantic blind pit bull, so they always see me carrying. He's like 90 pounds, and I have to like fling him over my shoulder to get him across streets.
Oh my
because
gosh.
he just like puts the brakes on. So like, yeah, and I have like no upper body strength, guys. So it's like, it's real. It's real.
my
Now I have like pulmonary embolism, so I'm like,
Oh.
dying.
Oh my gosh, Danny, really?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I have a blind pit bull. His name is Geordie. He's named after Geordie LaForge from Star Trek because
Cute.
he's blind and brown and handsome.
Oh.
And also my maiden last name is Burton. So, LeVar Burton. I figured it all worked.
Oh.
Yeah, but he's a hot mess.
Oh.
Yeah. So my neighbors all know me because they're like, what is going on? What is happening? And I'm like, he's blind. There's just nothing I can do about it.
All right.
Oh.
Oh, man.
Cute.
Yeah.
I will say with that whole door knocking thing though, I remember in school that they were like, the biggest thing that you can do for door knocking that'll get responses is making like a flyer and having a picture of you and your pet, like whatever that pet might be. For some reason, it gives the biggest responses to people. And so,
Really?
yeah, so
Pets.
So I'm almost out. Like I'm almost out of my pictures that just say hello neighbor, because I thought that would be friendly enough. But now once he said that and I started thinking about it, I met up with another agent and he was like, oh yeah, one of my other past agents at a different agency that I was at used to door knock a lot, and he did one with his pet, and that's how he literally got like all of his clientele, because he would always do one with a pet. And I'm like, you're kidding me. Like, what am I thinking? I already knew this. Why didn't I do this?
Well, I could totally do that. Some people could borrow one of my pets because I used to work in vet med before I started here. So I have 2 dogs and 5 cats and 3 turtles.
Oh wow.
Just go to a vet.
I literally live in a veterinarian's office. Like, it's a problem.
We'll just come do the photo shoot at your house.
You guys are so funny.
Just take a
You guys
pet.
are so funny. You stay on, but then you don't even turn your cameras on. Talking in the
We're
dark.
just chatting.
It's like
Okay,
a
so
phone call.
we're gonna see if this works. We're going to use my computer, and Melissa's going to use it, and then we are gonna we're gonna punt, right? That's
Yeah.
how we do this. But I don't know. I mean, I guess you just log in MLS on mine, right?
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Okay, so we're gonna go here. So now you can log into the MLS there.
Okay.
Oh my God, this is so backwards.
I am not an Apple user.
It'll
This
be
is going to be so
okay.
fun. I wish I was. So who's been out door knocking? I heard that was your topic of conversation. Super proud of you. Ooh, what's this?
An error. Oh, try like hit it again like this thing. I don't know why it does that to me. Something's not right here.
Mm-mm.
I don't know why. I thought it was
Okay, let's try. Where'd it go? Try that again.
Okay.
Oh,
Wait, this is
Well, see,
me.
That's is it you?
Yes.
Oh my
yay.
gosh. Okay.
Well, that
So
was
now
goofy.
let's go on Zoom before we get too far, and so we can share screen. Which screen are we sharing?
Yeah, I think
is
so.
it that one?
Yep. Yep.
Right there.
Either restart it.
Right there.
Will it? Is it working?
Yeah.
Is it up? Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Yay.
For fun.
Okay, so do we want to do it on here or should we do it the other way?
I think. Let's see if this works.
Okay.
We know we have a backup now.
Okay.
Now we're in stereo.
All right. I mean, everyone needed a coffee break or a bathroom break, right? This is no big deal. Hang on. Wait. Oh, we're still on your screen, I think.
There we go. Isn't this so much fun?
Yeah, technology is definitely a joy. Okay, I think we're back in business. All right, so as I was saying, you're so excited, you got them to sign the listing agreement right away, and then they tell you, oh, but actually we're not available for showings for a couple weeks. You absolutely must fill out this certification to withhold form, and therefore it's a good idea to just keep a few blank ones with you at all times, so you can pull it out when you need to. It says notice to agent up here. This is, the listing is being withheld from MLS cooperation. So basically what that means is you've got a listing agreement signed in your briefcase, but you're not letting any other cooperating realtors know, and that's not okay. You have to let them know. So it goes on the North Star MLS, but it's on as a status of as withheld from the MLS. So you put in the same contract date that you had on the listing agreement, same expiration date that you had, fill in all the same address, PID number, is it a single family, is it a lot, what exactly is it? And then this is signed again by the owner and by you. And you need to put your information in there. And then this goes to the North Star MLS so that they're informed of what we're up to.
Question.
Yeah.
Couldn't you just put coming soon then, or once it's signed, it has to go on?
That's a really good idea to actually do it as coming soon. That is what most realtors do instead.
Instead of filling out the form.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and the coming soon form looks really similar to this. However, there may be reasons why you don't want it yet to be seen by the public on the North Star MLS. So this would be something where really there'd be almost like no knowledge of it except for you, our front office, and the North Star MLS system. Jessica, anything to add?
Well, the thing is, when you put it on coming soon, nobody can see it. So if you wanted somebody in our office to see it, they can't. Like, absolutely no one can see it. So that's why if you wanted to still market it to people in our office and have it as a withheld, you don't want to do the coming soon. And the coming soon is a maximum of 21 days. And really what we're seeing now is that it is, like in our ALC call this morning, what we said is put it on a coming soon and then you'll at a certain price. And if you don't get a ton of showings, you know you're overpriced. And you can change that price before it even goes active, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a kind of a cool tactic. But you just want to make sure that you're not, I mean, it's a Do you know, Melissa? I think it's $1,000 fine at least. for
Mm,
showing.
I should ask. Yeah, I'm
Showing
sure it
for-
is.
And they said that you can accept, or you can receive, or make offers or receive offers. on
You
it.
can.
You can sight unseen,
Yeah, you can.
which is a huge risk.
So I pulled up the coming soon authorization form, which you can see is essentially just a duplicate of it. Oh, here we go. It does say here that you must inform both the seller and be aware yourself that once it hits the MLS and the coming soon status, that it cannot be shown, and that any showings of a property in the coming soon status disqualifies this property from the status, and a $1,000 fine is assessed to the listing agent. I have learned since working here that that also applies to home inspections. Some people have said, I'm not going to technically do a showing, but I just want to bring a home inspector in to do a quick home inspection, and then I'm going to make this offer sight unseen. Absolutely no one is allowed during coming soon. And it is, as Jessica said, only able to be in the coming soon status for a maximum of 21 days. So if you sign a listing agreement and someone says, I'm committed to working with you, but I don't actually want my property to be for sale until June, you absolutely must use that withheld form.
And
Again,
you can shorten that 21 days too. Like you're not set in stone. It's not like you put it in and then it's like, oh no, we have to wait. You can say, oh, take it out.
right.
Change
Yeah,
the status.
yeah, exactly. I just paused here because I had a thought. You are the expert and you are there to educate and help the seller. As you're doing that, as you're having conversations with them, you may answer questions but want to follow it up with supplemental documented information. So you might explain to a potential client who's going to list their house this option of coming soon, and you may express to them how important it is that no one can show their house during the 21 days, but maybe they question you on that or say, give me more specifics. You could always, if you're having a phone conversation rather than face-to-face where you've brought the forms, you could always just save this as a PDF, save it to your computer, and then email it over to them. Why, as an example of why there's a couple different options here on save. But again, not a lot to fill in on here, so we're gonna just go to save and exit. Okay, this is something that is going to be a requirement of the front desk when you have a new listing. They do this as a convenience to you. There's not a lot of other real estate brokerages that I'm aware of that will set up not only uploading all your information for the new listing, but they'll also set your client up in showing time. And it takes a few minutes for you to do that. So take advantage of this. This is something that they're doing that is really nice, but it does also have to be very complete. So the date that you fill out this form, it doesn't require any signatures, but the date that you fill out this form, and then turn it all over to the front desk to be listed, make sure you have this information on here. There's going to be a lot of blanks because you're not going to necessarily know what the MLS listing number is yet. You'll be able to fill in your contact information as the listing agent. You'll let them know if you want to confirm all showings. There may be an instance for that where they have given you permission or they want you to be in control of that and you approve all the showings. Maybe you just want to be informed, FYI, hey, there is a listing and it's quick and easy for you to be informed on your cell phone via text. Or you want to collect them all into a saved email folder in your email program, then you would have them emailed to you. You probably also want to be notified if there are canceled appointments. They can call you, just email you or text you. And again, this comes from the system. But then what's more important is you're going to put in here what your client in their email, and then you need to ask them, do you want you both to be able to confirm showings? And you'll want to explain to them how showing time works and how convenient it is. So again, there's going to be some things that you leave blank here. I wouldn't say this is hugely important, but just very helpful for the front desk for you to provide as much information as possible. And then if you have an electronic lockbox on the front door, you'll put that there. If you have a combination lockbox, you'd put that there, and then you'd put the number in. And then some people have, just those key codes on their front door that you can use as well. It is definitely our office policy and preference that you use an electronic lockbox. Anyone have questions about lockboxes? How to get them? How to use them? Yeah.
I do. I feel like I paid for it, but I don't know where for the Supra. See, I didn't know about the Supra until I was gonna go into the house.
Yeah.
I was like, what's the code? No, this is the wrong thing. But you have to call down to Spot. Okay. And she'll set you up with the, you know, because if you're already making payments, they should have went.
Yeah, I already even have my like password and everything.
Yeah, so it's an app that you get on your phone and you call SPAR and they'll give you like they'll kind of run through it and then it gets applied to your phone. They have to do it over the phone because it's when you're gaining access to anyone's home, right? So, and then the actual lockbox, you have to purchase those and those you purchase from SPAR. And you're gonna wanna be proactive about that and not be like, hey, we're ready to list. Oh my God, I need a lockbox.
Yes.
Because the lockboxes are only available at SPAR, so you physically have to go there and get it, right?
Mhm.
And they're between 100 and 125. They're yours forever. The battery life is like 15 years or
Yep.
something, or
Yep.
maybe longer. And then it is programmed in for you. So then once you put it on the door, it lets you know, and through, is it Showing Time?
Yep.
Or through the
Su-
app?
I think it's through
the
Supra.
app,
Yep.
it will let you know everybody who's coming in that house, when they come in, and who they are. And like I've had agents say, why are you at that house? You know, and I'm like, oh, it's our, you know, final walkthrough or whatever. And they're like, oh my God, okay. So you just want to make sure that, like, I have one on hand, and then if I know like I've got another listing coming up, I'll just go get another one.
Use the KWPR Facebook group. I just saw a post on there recently where they said, I'm looking to buy more lock boxes, or maybe someone has boxes that they want to sell if they're getting out of the business.
Yep.
But these boxes kind of revolutionized our work when they first came out, which was,
Yeah.
you know, what, 2009 or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And what's beautiful about it is it's a huge safety feature. And it's a really big convenience. So it's safer for your sellers because I can't share the numerical code with so-and-so to so-and-so to break in later. It can only be utilized by someone who's paid the fee, downloaded the app, and has an active real estate license. And then the reason I find it so convenient for us is, especially in Minnesota with change of seasons, they don't get frozen, they don't get jammed, they don't get all screwed up. They just operate very smoothly, and you don't have to remember a bunch of codes. You just literally go to your phone and say that you want access.
Yep, and photographers and inspectors, if they go through the proper channels, they can get access as well. And if they don't have access, then that's where you're gonna need to meet them there. But then I also would say to the company, like, are you gonna get access? Like, you know, because that'd be handy for me, right?
Mhm.
So, or you just work with somebody who does. The other thing I was gonna mention about that is that it's from 8 PM to 9 AM, there's no access. So that
You can change
guarantees,
that.
yeah, it guarantees that, you know, nobody's going to be trying to, they just can't get in, right? So,
Another really good safety feature, and
Yeah.
something that you should mention to your sellers so that they know with what integrity we hold our position in their lives. It's very private, it's very confidential. We want their safety and security and respect for their downtime, not just showing time. Okay, I just went into the North Star MLS because I wanted to show you one thing. So when I search, the most common way is I go into search single family and I go down to detail. I want to give you guys this visual. The reason we're going next into the single family residential listing input form, and buckle your seatbelts because this is a ton of information, really boring and really monotonous. But the reason it is that
it's really
way,
important.
it's really important. The reason it is that way is because of our search. It's because these are the options that you can search by, and not all of them are just open to putting in any information. Many of them are a drop down where you have to say it is either a single story, a 2-story, a story and a half. So you are limited to the information that you can give on a listing input form, driven by lots of history, data, statistics, and people who are analytical, who've put together the best way to search for properties. So when you go into the listing input form, you'll notice everything's numbered. Just like all of our lines are numbered, it's just a way of being more clear and concise and specific. And then some of the numbers are going to be in white, which means they're optional, and some of the numbers are going to be in black, which means they are required. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and you want to make it easy on yourself, you could really just start with the numbers that are dark, and then after you've given yourself a breather, then you can go back and fill in the ones that are optional. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll make sure that the seller understands that basis, and I'll make sure that they understand they don't need to be looking at my every line here and worrying with a fine-tooth comb if I've gotten things right or not. These can all be changed. But I do spend a lot of time talking with them about this. And this is, these are important things that they need to understand in working with a real estate brokerage, that by signing this authorization below, the seller acknowledges the following things: that the real estate broker is a participant in the multiple listing service. You, the seller, have authorized me, the broker, to give this information to the MLS. All of this becomes now a property of the MLS, so on and so forth. Read through those things, but essentially that's what they're signing, is understanding of these things up here, and everything down below can be a little bit fluid. So you'll see here where it talks about the black boxes are required, the white boxes are not necessarily required, and then the black ovals are on something that we can talk about later, just if it's going to be entered as a comparable sold listing. So a lot of the stuff is going to be auto-filled in if you've used the wizard, and if not, you'll need to go back in and fill them on their own. There's some things in here that are a little bit old school, in all honesty, like I now am filling in Judicial Road, where years ago I would fill in Judicial and then click Road. But they've streamlined some things here. But this is an example of a drop-down box. So the school district goes by number, but there's a drop-down box here if you need to scroll through it and try to find, try to find the best option. You're going to have to do some research. You're going to have to be a detective. There's some things here in parentheses that say this is only if it's within a certain school district and whatnot. If it's been listed before, I find myself using dual screen or printing out the former listing and using that as a little guide for what gets filled in. And again, this is directions. That's another thing that's a little bit old school. People are using GPS and they're finding their way there, but you never know. If there's a realtor who's showing your listing and they are old school, they're going to want to see what the directions are. So try to be as thorough and as informational as you possibly can. Some of this information you're going to need to find from the county tax records. Jessica, jump in if there's anything that you see as common misses or really important information here. The tax year, you'll find, as we know, property taxes are paid in arrears. So the property taxes that they pay in 2021 are really based on the value of the home in 2020. So you will have some older, outdated tax information here that you've gotten from the county records, but make sure and don't go way old. Don't go way, way back. This needs to be a proper reflection of what a buyer would estimate their taxes for as they're calculating what their mortgage payment would be. You put in the date that the listing started and the date that the listing is expired, and those have to match what you have on your listing contract. You put in what the buyer's broker compensation is, which we've discussed is 2.7, unless you're in some of the Wisconsin or outlying areas. If there's a sub-agent comp in Wisconsin, or if there's a facilitator compensation, those are a lot less likely. I don't see as much of those. And then if there's a variable rate compensation, and that would be if you say to your listing, hey, I'm going to list this for you at 7%, but I'm going to reduce my commission if I find the buyer, if it's a dual agency type of thing. And you do need to disclose that online. This is something that could get you an ethics complaint if you've sold it as a dual agent by yourself, but you didn't disclose that to other realtors that you're essentially competing with. You may find at some point in your career that it's helpful to have a co-listing agent if you're tied up at work or with something else and you form some sort of partnership with another realtor. That would be what's referred to as the co-listing agent. And then you put in all the phone numbers, and you'll see here appointment phone, where it used to be required is now white because we're able to use showing time. It's not as important to list what phone number they would call to schedule a showing. We reiterate here what the lockbox type is and then where you got your lockbox. So this stands for St. Paul Area Association of Realtors, as we had talked about. Optional lockbox serial number. When you guys are mega agents and you're listing 30 houses a month, you're probably going to want to keep track of where your lockboxes are, and this is a good way for you to do that. The lockbox serial number's on the back of it. You'll have filled out an exclusive right to sell their property, but there may be some other types of agency relationships that you've predetermined with them. And again, this is about informing the larger population of realtors in our association what type of arrangement you have with the seller. That's why that's important. This is worth talking about because most all the listings that you guys do will be in this previously owned checkmark category. However, it's valuable for you to know as you're showing properties. There's the status here called to be built floor plan. And that would be if there's a vacant lot and a builder who is suggesting the type of house that they can build on that address. They include some photography of homes that they've built in the past that are going to look similar to this one that they've advertised at that price. And that would be called a to be built floor plan. And those are very confusing to our clients. Those are very confusing to the customers who are looking at Zillow online. So you as the industry expert, I want to make sure that you guys are informed and kind of ahead of the clients on that. And then the other ones that are logical would be the completed new construction, a spec home that's under construction, or models that are either for sale, or pay attention to this one too, models that are not for sale. A lot of the large national builders will list their models, but they don't intend to sell them until the next phase of that development is ready. But for you in your business, you're going to most often be checking this previously owned. You also need to disclose, and therefore you need to ask your clients, is your house in foreclosure? Is it already owned by a lender, which would not be likely if they are still living there? They would have been asked to leave. Do you have enough money, as we talk about the proceeds of the sale, do you have enough money to pay off your mortgage? And if they don't, it would be considered a potential short sale. If you're selling a property that you own yourself, you need to disclose if the owner is an agent. You need to disclose if this is a property that they can live in year round. This is going to matter to the mortgage company mainly, or if this is something seasonal that say it's on an island, you can't get to it, or it doesn't have heat, you can't live there in the winter, for example. Strange that this is a required box, but does it have a rental license? You're almost always going to be checking no. If it does have a rental license, you need to have those in a lot of cities. A lot of cities are really worried about the prominence of Airbnb right now. So you need to get a license if you intend to rent the house on Airbnb. And then there are other rental licenses that in some cities you have to get. Is this house being sold as an auction? Very unlikely. And if it is being sold in an auction, there's some more things that you need to fill out here. Is this owned by fractional ownership? Is it a condo and it gets rented out weekly and it's actually owned by 4 different families? You would need to disclose that. If it happens to be that new construction that we were referencing before, is this in a new development? And then if so, you'd fill out that kind of information there. You'd also fill out builder information here, but again, take note, those are all white boxes. This reiterates what you've already talked about with them on the listing agreement. So do you allow us
Is it just me that lost audio again?
No, it's me too.
Nah, they're gone again.
Shoot.
Yeah. Me too.
So about that door knocking, No, I'm just kidding.
Ugh. Goodness.
Have either of you done a listing?
I haven't. I want to.
Not yet, no.
Okay, I was just wondering on this when they were before the single family input, we did the showing time form, and I just did my first listing, but we're on a withheld, and so I was like, oh, so do I go into showing time and like add my seller so then they
There will be a chance for you to note agent remarks down at the bottom. Oh, yeah, good talk. There'll be a chance for you to note agent remarks down at the bottom. Oh, are we on? Hi. We're doing the backup system again.
So you guys on Zoom, you're just gonna need to follow along with the printed out stuff that you have.
Oh,
and
that
we'll
works.
just do that until we can get the internet again.
Yeah, I think our internet went out again, so you get to see my smiling face. All right, so we are now on page 4 of the single family residential listing input form. I guess that brings to mind too, there's a separate input form for lots and land. And I think that's it for separate listing input forms, but make sure and take note of that before you get to your listing agreement if you're listing something other than single family home. There's a different one for lots and land, yeah. So we were just talking about the importance of putting in the number of bedrooms and then the importance of clarifying whether you have full baths, 3/4 baths, half baths, even a quarter bath, which seems a little weird, but that would be like in a, 1900 built Minneapolis house if they put just a toilet in the basement in some sort of remodel that they did. It also it's going to be important to a lot of people, not everyone, that you fill in approximate dimensions of these rooms here and that you note what level it's on. It gives you the option of saying it's either on the main floor, it's on the upper floor, it's on the basement or lower, kind of however you want to clarify that. And then there's also, of course, a third level that some modified floor plans can have. So just be consistent with whatever term you choose. This happens to be a split entry style. So on the main level is their foyer and kind of a den room, as I classified it. Again, keeping in mind, these are in the drop downs. So these are things that people are searching for in those fields, and that's why they're drop downs. If there's something that you just can't find in here that you just don't see a fit, you could label it other for the level or the room, I'm sorry, that the house is on. So the reason I want you to be paying attention to dimensions, but I don't want you to worry yourself too much over it, is I always recommend down further in the bottom on agent remarks, you write dimensions are approximate or dimensions are based off blueprint. That way it covers you to just say, hey, there's a possibility that it's not exactly 21.5, maybe it's 21.33. But people are looking at this to make sure that they can fit their couch in there, they can fit their pool table in there, they could fit their king bed in there. So the measurements are important. Just don't put a ton of pressure on yourself to get it like down to the inches. Next, we go down to talking about the land that the property is sitting on. This happens to be a 1.6 acre parcel of land in Burnsville. I put in the lot dimensions after the fact, but you'll be able to get that from the county records. And is it helpful for me to try to show that to them now? No, because I'm not on Zoom there.
when you go into, like, Dakota County is one I go into a lot.
Yep,
When you go into the map and you zoom in, it's gonna have like the yellow little map.
a
and then
measuring
you get
tool.
closer, It'll tell you the feet.
Yep, and a measuring tool on there as well. I've sold quite a bit of farmland, and it's important to disclose if this land is leased. Also, if you happen to sell a mobile home, a trailer home, those, they own the home, but they lease the land that they're on. So you'll want to say, is it leased or not? And then what the lease amount is. You certainly need to put in the year that the house was built, and then they've added a few fields here, and this is challenging for me, the structure square footage. I always go back to the former listings if there are some, and I also always go back to what the county records say about the house. Even if it's contested by the homeowner and they say, oh, no, I'm sure my house is this many square footage. Well, I'm sure you want it to be, but you really do have to you need to verify it. Yeah, you need to verify it. All of these are in black boxes, and so the front desk is going to make sure that you have those. So just use logic, just use reason, and always go under rather than over, so you don't overpromise and underperform. But you can use logic by saying the above ground total square footage could be the same square footage as the foundation. The below ground total square footage could very likely be the same square feet as the foundation. And then the below ground finished square footage would be less than that because most likely underneath the stairs and in the mechanical room is unfinished. Garage stalls is a requirement, but garage dimensions is not. That's one of those things where people with big old SUVs, people with pickups, people with boat trailers, they really are paying attention to that. So if you can get that measurement easily, or if the seller will measure it for you if you've forgotten, which I do a lot, be sure to get that for them. It is valuable. Same kind of purpose for these garage door heights and widths, not required. It doesn't go so far as to allow you to do it for both the double door and the single door. So you just kind of have to use that art rather than a science. But heck, if their garage door height is 9 feet tall or 10 feet tall, that's really going to matter to someone who has a work van or something. So fill that in. If it is a townhome or a condo and there are additional parking spaces, that's really of value too. So not a requirement, but something that I think is a good idea to fill in. We talked about this in the Builder Expo last week. Newly built homes, probably from 2010 on, are oftentimes scored on what's called a HERS score, where they're measuring the energy efficiency of a house. And the goal is to have a lower number rather than a higher number, like Gulf. And so putting in the HERS score here could be really of value to people who are very aware of their eco footprint. So again, more information, the better. Is it green certified? Maybe it is certified. Maybe they're testing it or they're pending the results. This one I don't see filled in as often. I want to give you guys the chance to ask questions about the style and the stories. I don't want to spend too much time on it because some of you may say, like, this is very logical. This makes perfect sense to me. But I do feel like I find a lot of people who have questions about this, both the sellers themselves and realtors.
I have a question, it's not necessarily on the style, but it's on the square footage.
Yep.
And so I'm going to be doing a pretend listing on my house.
Oh, good.
But
Smart.
my boyfriend built it.
Yep.
And he's lived in it almost full time. So the numbers I put in here are going to be totally different and way off from what's under the tax records.
Sure.
Is that something that causes problems?
So I think what I'm gathering is the tax record should be accurate in terms of what the foundation size is or what the basic house was built, but it may be inaccurate in terms of when he built it, there might not have been a finished basement. Could that be part of it?
I think maybe it's not the tax records I was looking at. It was at
Blueprints?
It was on Remind, or it was one of those programs through the MLS. Where
Sure.
You can bring up the property, and it shows the total finished square foot, and then the unfinished square foot, which are and they actually are.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I do understand that. You can contest it, but I think you would be better off going on the smaller number than the larger number so that you don't wind up with some sort of fines or ethics complaints that you overpromised and underperformed. Yeah. I will forewarn you too in terms of square footage and size. And let's look at that on an individual basis. You guys, I mean, program me in, you can use me for these kinds of things. But when you get a floor plan from a builder, they will oftentimes tell you the foundation size, which includes the house and the garage, because they're using foundation size to go out to their excavator and to go out to their concrete company and to go out to their roof truss manufacturer. And those types of people care what the total foundation is. But for here, we want to know what the foundation size is underneath the livable square footage. They also will have on their blueprint black lines with hashtags that say this is 10 feet wide, this is 20 feet wide. Well, they measure from inside the framing wall to inside the framing wall. And what you guys are measuring in room sizes needs to be literally wall to wall, not inside the framing studs. So there, if you're basing this off of blueprints, disclose that in the agent remarks. There will be some variability on this type of thing. So if you can list something that's been listed before, that is the best. That is the easiest for sure. Okay, so going back to style, any other questions about that? I don't think so. Okay, a lot of people seem to have questions about split entry versus modified 2-story versus 3-level or 4-level split, but use your logic. Ask me if you have questions. Not a lot of houses are built handicap accessible, so you'll most often be checking none, but this is a marketing tool. So if there are things like all the doors happen to be 36 inches wide, or you know that all the hallways are 42 inches wide, if you know that all the door handles are levers, if you've seen grab bars in the bathroom, be checking these. People are searching for these types of specific things, and that will help your seller and you market their house. Certainly disclose if there's central air conditioning or if there's a window air conditioning or if there's none. The exterior of a house, this one can slip people up because in the older houses, it's hard to know, is the material on the side of this house, is it like a fiberboard? Is it an engineered wood? What exactly is this? It's pretty cut and dry if it's a vinyl siding or if it's a stucco house. But it gets harder when you're trying to determine, like, what is this old material that they put on this house in 1965? So ask a lot of questions, be a detective, be accurate. If you're not sure, just leave it off, because you don't want to get a fine for misrepresenting what the house actually has. Most common, the house will have forced air heating or hot water heating. Every now and then there'll be these radiant heats or geothermal, such as that. You'll want to be clear what the style of the basement is. And actually on this one, there's a lot of check boxes that you can fill out. So it's a walkout basement and it's finished livable. Oh, and underneath the kitchen and dinette, there's a crawl space too. And the house is drain tiled and there's a sump bump. So you'll find that there's really quite a few things that you can fill in there. Again, don't be too hard on yourself, but the more information that you can properly and accurately reflect on there, the better it will be for you and your sellers for marketing. You'll want to be sure to ask them, like Cassandra, I'm sure you have a lot of people who heat their house with propane, maybe even a few people who heat their house with solar. Most of us are going to be natural gas, but you'll want to be really accurate about that. Propane is quite expensive to heat your house with, and that's gonna, if you change that after the fact, once you're under contract, that's going to affect the affordability and the monthly payment for the person who's buying the house. And it could be something that the house falls through on if you didn't accurately reflect what the house contains and therefore what their expenses would be.
So if you have a house, just like my house, we have 3 different heating.
Yeah.
Can you check more than one box?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. It's just on the drop downs where you can only choose one. But if all these boxes exist, you can check them all if you want to. Yeah. Well, not in all of them. Like, for example, it can't be a residential single family zoning and a business commercial zoning. It has to be one or the other. Any questions about zoning? That's kind of like the house style where I find there's sometimes some questions about that. Good. Parking characteristics. Again, lots of options here. Is there a garage door opener? Is there a floor drain? Is there electricity within the garage so people can plug in their mechanical tools and things like that? Give more information that you can. Really important to disclose whether you're connected to city water and city sewer. And this water gets a little bit tricky because in a lot of houses that were built in the metro area during a certain age range, there was a well. You see a lot of those houses even in Burnsville where under the front step there, that's where the well was. And then wells are usually capped. So you'll want to say that there is city water, but there also is a well, and then you'll need to do a well disclosure on that. This is all optional property information, so it's all in white, but it's going to be in your best interest to check off as much as you possibly can on here. If for some reason the seller has a loan on their house that's assumable and interest rates jump up from here, it may be in a seller's best interest to sell the house with an assumable loan at a lower interest rate, making it more appealing to a wider variety of buyers. But in today's instance, in today's case, you're most often going to check that it's not assumable. Then you're going to want to go through and check all the things that they have included in their house. And this is, I cannot lie, this is where it gets daunting. So don't be too hard on yourself. You can always add this in after the fact. You can just email Angela at the front and say, hey, it turns out they do have an air exchanger. I saw it last time I was there. Please add that to it. Try to make your forms accurate as well. But don't let this be a hurdle or a burden for you to completing your listing input form. Okay, you guys, make the blacks and the whites optional versus mandatory, you know, make that a little bit easier on you. But as I've said many times, the more information you can provide, people are searching for it. So things here like in-ground sprinkling system, security system, things that are rare and appealing, you'll want to be sure to check. The dining room always trips me a little bit. So they don't have a formal dining room. They have an informal dining room. Do we call that a kitchen dining room or do we call that a living dining room? Totally up to you. No right or wrong way to do it. Just try to be as clear and concise as you possibly can. Same with the bath descriptions. Make sure and note if there's a private master and if it's a 3/4, if it's a full, if it's a walk through from the hallway to get there. The foundation of the house, again, these are all optional, but the foundation of the house, is it a block foundation? Is it a poured concrete foundation? It's probably one of those two, but was it a brick foundation from 1900? Did they use wood framing for the foundation, which I've seen some? Did they use insulated concrete forms? Is it a log foundation in a really old house? Again, this is an optional forms or optional blank, so you don't need to know if it's 200 amp service, but if it is, check it. What's the existing financing on the house? Do they own it free and clear? Do they have a conventional loan on it? All those types of things. I'm going to scroll through here a bit unless Jessica wants to jump in since this is all optional. Okay. Are there any outbuildings on the property? Is there a garden shed? Is there a pole building? Is there a workshop? Is there a pool? Is it above ground? Is it below ground? Is there road frontage? Is it city? Is it township? I'd say though this is optional, where this is really important is I think you'd want to be sure to inform potential buyers if it were something where it's a private road, and that would be something where the homeowners association manages the snow plowing. I think that's more important here in Minnesota. Oh, here we go. Road responsibility. Is it association maintained, private, public? It's usually very appealing to a buyer to know that there's a new roof. So this is an optional box, but you're going to want to say if the roof is 8 years or older, 8 years or newer. Special searches here. Does it have 3 bedrooms on one level? Does it have 4 bedrooms on one level? Those kinds of things are typically very appealing to buyers and they're searching for that. And are all the living facilities on one level? So that would include the laundry room. So kitchen, bathroom, laundry room, a bedroom, is that all on one level? And that would be valuable to market. We talked about this with the listing agreement. What kinds of terms will the seller accept? So when you're filling out your listing contract and you've forgotten, oh, what were those options that Melissa said? I didn't write them down when we were in the class. You can always reference back here to 709 and say, these are what the options are. If you're like Cassandra in outstate Minnesota, you're probably even going to be able to say that the person who buys your house can use a USDA loan. If it is that assumable loan that we talked about just a couple sections up, you're going to want to list that on your contract in addition to checking it here. If you're listing a waterfront property, this is really important. Does it have shared access to the water? Is it just on a creek and stream? Is it on a pond? Is it on a river? Is it on a lakefront, or does it have a lake view? So you'll want to get specific about that, but then these things are optional. So you don't have to necessarily say what the DNR lake number is and what the lake acres are and the lake depths are, but let's just say you're helping someone possibly buy a cabin and you're representing the buyer and they don't know these areas and they want to know, well, how big is the lake and how deep is the lake? You can see where if the listing agent had taken the time to fill all this in, that it would give more information to a buyer would be more interested and apt to schedule a showing. So all these things are really just in here to help you market this property for your seller. So if you are listing a condo or a townhome, are there amenities that are shared in that condo or townhome? You can optionally check any of those, but what is a requirement of listing a condo or a townhome is you do have to talk about the covenants. So you'll want to contact the Townhouse Association to find out for sure. You can use your resources by looking at other townhomes and condos in that complex to see what other listings have said, but I promise you when you do that exercise, you'll find a wide variety. So as an expert, it would be KWPR's preference that you contact the Townhouse Association directly and ask them for these types of things. Are there breed restrictions? Are there weight limits for the pets and such? If you're listing a hobby farm, or if it's an agricultural type of farm, you're going to want to make sure and note these types of things as well. So then I talked about remarks. So this is the last page, hallelujah. I talked about remarks and being sure to mention on here that all measurements are approximate. It is the responsibility of the buyer and the buyer's agent to verify that. So that is really important that you put in all of your agent remarks. In your public remarks, I recommend having something separate in the public remarks from the agent remarks. And the public remarks is going to be more of kind of like, you know, envision yourself here looking at the western view with stunning sunsets. And the agent remarks just more kind of factual, tactical information. I just put in here notes for myself, and then I ended up revising this before I actually turned it into the office. Any questions? Okay, we can move on to something a little less monotonous, but this is one of those forms where if you have lost all those check marks somewhere because you lost internet or you lost, you know, your computer crashed or something like that, every couple pages you're probably going to want to go through and save. But then when you get to the end, just go to save and exit. Okay, we have about 15-20 minutes left. So we're going to cruise through some disclosure stuff. And a lot of this you'll find we'll be able to go through really, really quickly. Anyone need a breather, or can I power through?
If for any reason you did.
When representing a seller, it is an absolute must that you have the seller fill out a disclosure, but there are two options. You can either have them fill out a seller's disclosure alternative or a full seller's disclosure. If the seller has never lived in the property themselves, let's say it was willed to them, they could appropriately fill out the seller's disclosure alternative. There are only a few check marks in here, so this is very simple, but what most people fill out is that they are waiving their written disclosure requirement. You could also suggest that they have a home inspection, a third-party inspection, and that they consider that inspection report to be their disclosure, but most sellers aren't taking the time to do that. And so instead, they're just doing this waiver of disclosure. Though they can waive disclosure, they do still have to disclose a few things. Do they know if there's a well? Do they know if there's a septic system? Do they know if there's some sort of value exclusion for the property? That would be in rural areas, there's something called green acres. But they would have to research this and find this from their property tax information. And then they absolutely must disclose if they, as the seller, are that foreign person. And we talked about that on the listing contract. They must also disclose if there was ever methamphetamine produced in the house, and they must also disclose if they've ever tested for radon. Now, if they're doing a seller's disclosure, they're very likely going to say they do not know of any of these things, and that's okay. But you as the realtor have an obligation for disclosure as well. So if you know some of these things, you have to give them proper guidance to do the disclosure saying that they are aware of that. This is something that they sign right away when you're doing the listing. It is something that we require for a new listing be included in the packet that you send to the front desk. And then the front desk will add it as a supplement to the listing so that it's visible and available for all realtors who are showing the property.
So for these this one and the next one, can the realtors ever fill anything out?
No, thank you for asking. It would be very tempting and very easy for us to make a lot of assumptions on this, but we need to make sure that the seller understands all the questions, that they answer them themselves. Great question. Another thing I used to do at my old brokerage is I would just kind of get rid of these forms at the back because there's nothing to sign on here. This is just information about what radon is. But here at KWPR, we do track who has given and or seen all of these radon in real estate transaction educational pieces. So make sure and keep that in your packet of disclosures for both buyers and sellers. I'm going to go on to the full seller's disclosure, and then you guys can ask questions of both of them after I've gone through both of them. So now this would be for selling your own house. This would be for selling your townhouse that you lived in before you bought your single family house. This is for the property that someone has owned, managed, operated, and really they do have the most information of anyone who could possibly have it. So I always do fill in for them what their property address is, their city, county, and their zip code, and then they really are required to fill in all the rest of it. We will show you in another class how you can send this to them in an editable format so that you can talk about all of this with them, let them know that you're happy to answer questions as they go through it, but we're going to be sending it to them in an email. Maybe I'll just do it now. I said I was going to do it at a later time. You're going to send them the seller's property disclosure, and then you'll see down here, you'll fill in their name, you'll fill in their email address, or ideally you've saved them as a contact in this system. You can personalize the subject line, you can personalize the message, and then you would send it to them as a link and you would allow them to edit that form. Have you guys used this feature yet? It's really handy. There is a downfall. If they don't save it, they've put a ton of work into it, and then you don't get to see it. So make sure that you tell them that you want them to save it regularly. And once they've saved it, when you go into your forms, when you go into your saved forms into this format here, you'll just be able to click on it and you'll see everything that they've personalized and changed. So they'll be editing this, they'll be adding information to this, they'll be making checkbox choices. What they can't do is sign it when you allow them to edit it, so you'll send it to them for signing as a secondary step.
Yep,
Anything to add?
Just at the top, what it'll have is that it'll have that file folder, and they're just gonna click on it, and it's very limited. It'll just say save, and that's what you wanna say. Like they'll say, well, how do I send it back to you? They don't have to. You just hit save, and that's it.
Good. That's really helpful to know. Jessica, do you think I should go through this line by line?
So it'll save, it'll save everything filled out right here, so then you can go back, go through and set it up for them.
Yep. I mean, I think, part of the homework is to do this, and even though it's tedious, is to go through and fill this out. Right? So I think what we could do is we can have that in the next class, and if there's questions on it, like right now, if anybody has questions, we can go over that.
Yeah.
Just so that you have enough time to get through the other.
Yeah, exactly. What I would say is, I'm impressed and surprised with a lot of clients that I give this to because I do not go through it line by line. They figure it out. And then there'll be things that they say like, I don't even know what that means. What is the type of title evidence? And they just leave it blank, and that's okay. That gives you something to answer for them or research and then answer to them. But giving them the benefit of the doubt, they'll know the answers to that, or they'll leave it blank. And then the guidance that you should give them is it is always better to over disclose rather than under disclose. So if they say something like, let's see, down here, I feel like I get this question quite a bit. Like, has any work ever been performed on the property? And most people are going to say yes. And then they're going to say, well, you know, I hung up that toilet topper in the bathroom and I drilled it in. And is that something I should write there? And I just say, that's great of you to be thinking of that. Yes, anything that you added to the house, go ahead and just write there, please explain. And those forms that are handwritten and filled out and completely covered, there's no harm in that. It is so much better to over disclose rather than under disclose. Gosh, there's this straight crack in my concrete floor in my basement. It's been there since the builder built it. Well, I know that it's there as like a relief, intentional crack that the concrete company put in, but should they disclose it? Yeah, and then explain that. You know, these are cracks that are here intentionally that the builder placed in for relief, and they've been there ever since we built them. Did your sewer back up? Oh, just a little bit. Yes, you check yes. Your sewer did back up. It's better to over disclose rather than under disclose. So one last thing that I would say on this form without going through it line by line is make sure that they understand if they don't have a central vacuum, they click not applicable. But if they have a ceiling fan that's not working, they check no. So there's value in explaining to them either you don't have it or it's not working. And that's the difference between not applicable and no. I feel like I get that question a lot. It's a little redundant here on do they have a well and a septic system? Preferential tax treatment. Again, on this one, it asks, are they a foreign person? And I say redundant, meaning we've already talked about the disclosure alternative. Are they aware of any methamphetamine that was produced there? This actually talks about the Cemetery Act. I don't usually explain that to them, but when you get to this question, are you aware of any human remains on the property? Most people are going to click no, right? There are a lot of questions usually though about the environmental concerns. They'll say like, well, I get occasional pests. I get occasional mice in the winter. Should I disclose that? Yes, because if the mice have left any droppings in the insulation anywhere in the house and it's discovered by a home inspector, we're going to have contradictory information like, no, I've never had a mouse in my house. Well, then why do you have mice droppings all over your house? So it is best to click yes and disclose, over disclose rather than under disclose. All right, so we're going to, this gets signed. It gets signed here by the seller, and then I think, as you guys know, it will get signed by the buyer once they make an offer on the property. Other disclosures that are less likely for you guys to come upon. Oh, actually, we added a new form and I almost forgot about it. This is an amendment to the disclosure. So I'm just going to flash forward to now you have helped your seller. They've sold this house and they've found a laundry list of things in the home inspection that the seller acknowledges, yeah, I probably should fix these things. There is a form in the system called this amendment to the disclosure statement, and it is going to cover your own CYA. If you have them take the time to fill out this amendment to the disclosure statement, the seller would sign it and then the buyer would sign it. So that would be the pest example is the perfect thing. Nope, I clicked no because I've never had any pests. Then it's discovered there's a bunch of mouse droppings. Then what they do is they have to, maybe hire someone to clean that out and re-insulate the basement. Well, we've emailed about all of that and we've had conversations about all of that, but to truly protect yourself and to protect the brokerage and to protect the sellers, it's best to amend the disclosure and to add information about that. Save and exit. It's signed by both, first the seller, then by the buyer. All right, so here are these other disclosure statements, which are a little less common, but as you know, a house built prior to what year has to have a lead-based paint disclosure? 1978. Yeah. And the fun thing to remember about that is that's the year I was born. So just remember me, the broker, 1978. If you're as old as me, you got a lead paint disclosure. If you're younger than me, you don't. What's important about this is paint prior to 1978 was manufactured with lead in it. And if your kids or your pets are going to have, little dust particles from the windowsill and they might consume it with their snack or, who knows what, you want to avoid that because that's deadly. So you want to make sure and disclose if you either have knowledge that there is lead-based paint, or most people say, I know it's probably there, I just have absolutely no knowledge of it. You as the seller need to initiate this form and you need to fill it out. When representing buyers, if there isn't a lead-based paint form on this house that is old enough for it, you have to insist that the seller generate it and send it to you. It'd be quick and efficient for you to just assume they have no knowledge, but if something goes awry and it's determined that you were the one who made that assumption and generated the form, it could be big trouble for you. So it's really important that you as the seller initiate it, that you put it in as a supplement on the listing, and then that the buyer complete the rest of it. So the buyer will say if they want to do an assessment or if they want to waive the assessment. This is something that you as the realtor need to sign, and it actually is something in auditing. I check the dates to make sure that those indeed were filled out by the seller first, signed by you as the selling realtor first, and then sent over to the buyer. If they're not, you have to do me a big favor. I don't know what that is, but I'm just making it up. Really, really important that you do that and that you do that in that order though. If the house has a well or a septic system, there's individual disclosures for those. I'm gonna put those, Jessica, on my notes as future more detailed classes because I feel like this is dragging on too long. But I'll just open them so that you can see them. The well disclosure requires that on behalf of your seller, you collect a lot of information. You need to find out what the well number is. You need to say if it's in use, if it's been sealed, if it's been shared, who manages it. There's really, really a lot of blanks here. So just put it on your personal checklist when you're going into a listing agreement. Make sure that you've done the research to find out if there might be a well or a septic system. And if there is, you also need to draw a location map for where those are on the property. So you can see here quite a few forms, and those are not optional boxes. Those absolutely have to be filled out. So that's the well and the septic system. The last two forms are going to go really, really quick. We are the industry experts. We need to help the sellers figure out, in addition to our 6% listing commission, what additional expenses do they have? So lucky for you, selling expenses do they have? So lucky for you, Keller Williams has put together this format for you. A lot of other brokerages, you have to make it up as you go. So use Jessica and productivity coaching to help you understand what types of numbers you have to put in here. What I did for mine is I referenced back on previous closings that I had, and I utilized, what did they actually charge for those things? They're going to be different depending on what day of the month the real estate tax proration is. They're going to be different based on the sales price of the house, what the state deed tax is. They're going to be different depending on what title company you use, what the closing fees are going to be, if there's a well or septic inspection. So again, don't let yourself get hung up on this. I realize this can be something that kind of lags you down, but look at this as a form that will differentiate you and will really help you be seen as the true expert. And it is a requirement for a listing before the front desk will list it on the MLS. You do have to have the seller sign it. So there's not a signing block on here, so you'll just add it in. But we want it to be signed and dated because then when it goes under contract, we also have them sign another one. It's a requirement for me to give you the clear to close that it is re-signed with whatever the actual contract sales price is. And you'll find in the Keller Williams templates, it does have these two columns. And I do think that's helpful because you can say to them, hey, we're listing your house. We're really going for it on price. There's a possibility we might not get a full price offer, or maybe you go the opposite and say there's a very high chance that you will get more than what you're asking for. And so you could put a $500,000 number in this column. And then they can see how their expenses compare at the two different sales price and then what their net proceeds will be. Any questions about that? I'm going to go to save and exit. Then the last form that I'm going to show you in the last 3 minutes is this listing change form. So you've sold the house, you've done the home inspection, you're so excited. Now you need to change it to pending. This form gets used for that. It also gets used when the closing has taken place and we want to be able to record accurate information on the MLS of what it sold for, what type of loan it was and such. There's other various little things that you can use this form for. Let's just say you listed a house, it didn't sell, you're coming up onto the time that the listing is going to expire. Well, you're out of contract and you're really out of luck of being able to represent them and getting paid unless you have adequately extended your listing contract. So you use just this simple one-page form for that. So you would change the expiration date, you would cancel the listing using this, you would change it to temporarily not available for showings using this, you would reduce the sales price using this. But when it comes to changing the status to pending and to sold, what's important for you to know is there are asterisks by the things that are required here rather than those different colored blocks. So you'll have to pay attention to the asterisks. You'll want to write the date that it was actually pending. They really are specific about that. You want to write the date that it's projected to close. That would be the on the contract, what the closing date is. And then you also need to research on the roster what the office ID number is of the realtor who represented the buyer and what their agent ID is, along with what their name is. So you know their name. Let's just say that Jessica is the one who sold my listing. I would go here to roster and I'd go to the agent roster. Have you guys used this yet? Okay. How do you spell nearing? N-E-H. Oops. N-E-H-R. Oh, weird. That's because it's this. Sorry. N-E-H-R-I-G. All right. So fortunately, Nearing is not a super common name, so I'll bet we'll be able to find her. Oh, look at that. If it was me, Johnson, you'd also want to write in their first name. If it was, you're like, oh, is it Melissa with one S or two S's? And you're just working quickly, you know, you can always put in like one or a few letters and then you put an asterisk after it to, just to widen the search options. So we're looking at Jessica and we're going to go to results and you're going to see here that there's an Anthony Nearing and there's also Jessica Nearing. So, oh, here she is. There is that sweet Jessica who was so great to work with representing the buyer. And when you click on it here, you'll get all of her contact information. So you'll be able to see what her agent ID is. You can just simply copy and paste. And then you'll put that over here on the selling agent ID. Paste, and then you would also do the same for the office ID. Okay. Once you have that signed, which it needs to be signed by the owners, it also needs to be signed by you. And if it happens to be cancellation, it needs to be signed by me as the broker. Once you have that signed, which this is one where I usually have people sign it individually. So I just click right on the sign button here. I create a new signing. One little tip on this is you can have it be sent to and signed by all the sellers, but then you can also add for yourself here as a convenience, you can add the front desk email address and you can say that you want that person to just receive the completed document automatically. Have you guys practiced that? Have you done that part yet? Okay. Well, we'll add that as we're going to do forms and how to use all these signings and such as another class. But that's just a convenience on signing that one-page form. Oh, shoot. I went out of forms, but I'm out of time. So I think that's okay. We covered a lot of information. It's meaningful that you guys took the time to be here. I don't expect you to retain it all, so program me in and call me with questions, but I hope you learned a few tips and tricks and priorities.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any questions from Zoom? All right. That was a long one. I hope you guys got some good information. Good luck to you.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.
Thank you.